Even though I didn't really know what the term agnostic meant at the time, I can look back and pinpoint the exact point where I realized I was an agnostic Christian rather than a Gnostic Christian. So if you happen to be unfamiliar with the terms Gnostic and agnostic, Gnostic means to know and agnostic means not to know or a lack of knowledge. I didn't use any of these words to describe myself, but looking back in the past, I can see the points in my life where I was a Gnostic Christian and see the points in my life where I was an agnostic Christian. And interestingly enough, I had an exact moment where I became a Gnostic Christian, and I actually had an exact moment where I became an agnostic Christian. I was up north with my dad's side of the family. Now, my grandfather on that side of the family is a rather argumentative person, and he likes to kind of stir the pot in regards to politics and religion and pretty much any other controversial topic you can think of. Theology-wise, you got some very interesting discussion going because there were some very interesting viewpoints in my family. You have my father, who is an agnostic atheist. You have my grandfather, who is an extremely skeptical Christian, so he will often play both sides, but he usually argues for the existence of some kind of deity. And then you have my uncle, who is a Gnostic fundamentalist Christian. And those three especially will really start to go at it sometimes at family functions. So it was the summer after my senior year of college. Although I was going into it being a fifth-year senior, I had one more semester of college to complete. I was at my grandparents' for some summer weekend, and the topic of religion came up. Now, I didn't really like participating in these sorts of arguments. I occasionally chimed in with things, but if I didn't feel like I had anything to really add to the conversation, I wouldn't. I had largely stayed out of this particular argument, but it was that night after the argument was over and most people went to bed, and I was in the kitchen, you know, getting a glass of water, getting a snack or something, and my grandfather comes in and starts talking with me. We started talking about religion, beliefs, things like that, and he's like, I wanted to ask you something. He's like, I know that your religion is really important to you and that you believe it and things of this sort, but will you admit that you don't know that your religion is right? I didn't really know what to say because I didn't really know what he meant, so I asked him to clarify. He said, well, you know that I like to discuss things like this. We like to have debates because it's interesting, because nobody really knows, because these are interesting topics to discuss. It's like, but you do know that nobody really knows, right? I mean, everybody has their beliefs, but nobody knows for absolute certain. And I paused and I said, well, but I feel like I've had things in my life that have kind of shown me that my beliefs are true. He somewhat understood that, but he's like, but the thing is, I was talking with your uncle, and he couldn't even admit the possibility that he could be wrong. You understand you could be wrong, right? And I kind of sat there for a second. I said, I don't think I'm wrong, though. And he goes, yeah, but you admit that you could be wrong, right? I thought back to the recent event where I thought God told me something and had been wrong about that. And I thought to myself, yeah, I've been wrong before. I don't think my current beliefs are wrong, I thought to myself, but it was certainly not impossible that I was wrong. I could be mistaken in one way or another. And I thought about my uncle, who was just as sure that his beliefs were right. We had very similar beliefs, but I knew my religion taught that he wasn't fully saved. I knew my religion taught that you needed to speak in tongues and things like that, and he didn't do that. I thought of, say, like my pastor from my church, who seemed to at least preach that he absolutely knew that the Bible taught this religion and it was true. And I saw my uncle, who was 100% sure that his religion and his beliefs about the Bible and things like that were true. They couldn't both be right. Someone had to be wrong, and my uncle couldn't even admit the possibility that he was wrong. So if my religion was true and he wasn't willing to listen to any sort of other arguments, and his close-mindedness of not even admitting the possibility that he could be wrong about some part of his religion kept him from going to heaven, kept him from truly experiencing God. That would be horrible if someone was that tight and that close-minded to other possible truths. And I thought to myself, I do think my religion's true. Things in my life had told me it was true. I felt like I experienced God and things of this sort, but I could be wrong about part of it, about all of it. It was possible. I found it highly unlikely, but it was possible. And I realized that that was the intellectually honest answer. To be fair, to have enough of an open mind to realize that there are some things I could be wrong about. There are some things my religion could be wrong about. I still believed it 100%. I told him, yeah, I could be wrong. I'll admit it. I believe 100%, but I could absolutely be wrong. And my grandfather got this smile on his face, like that was, to him the right answer. And he said that he respected me for admitting that I could be wrong. I felt good about the answer. I realized it was the only answer that really made sense. And I thought of my church and my pastor. And I realized that my pastor would not have supported that answer. I realized he would have told me to tell my grandfather that I knew was true. But it wasn't the intellectually honest answer. Why couldn't I believe 100% but admit that I could be wrong? Why couldn't I hold on to a truth that made sense to me and seemed to be proving it was right, but hold on to the possibility that it could be wrong in case someday alternate evidence came along and showed me that I was wrong? Why would truth be so weak to not be able to handle that admitting that I could be wrong? It didn't make any sense to me to not admit that. Looking back, I realized that was the exact moment I became an agnostic Christian. And it felt good. It felt honest. It felt right. If I really loved the truth, and if that's what I really wanted, I had to admit that I could be wrong.